Isaac Simpson and Maria Perry, I'd like to welcome you to this week's episode of Short on Shorts. Our special guest reviewer this week is Jason Rose, producer of films like Chef and Jane Got a Gun, and the third film we reviewed was Timelike, directed by Richard Boylan. Make sure to check it out before watching our review. The link is in the description below. Enjoy the movie and our review.
Our next film is Timelike. It is written and directed by Richard Boylan, and it is starring Eva Jean Melhoy and Richard Boylan. It is a found footage sci-fi short that uses sort of beautifully grainy VHS footage to tell a Terminator-esque story about time travel and somebody coming back in time to a house where a girl is having a night with her boyfriend to tell her about some catastrophe that's coming in the future. There's a note involved, and it was Maria's selection. Maria, what was it about this movie that stood out?
Well, I love the idea of found footage films, but I haven't seen very many that are anything but straight horror. Like, every found footage film you see is, kids running in a forest, haunted houses. So I was really excited when it said it was found footage and sci-fi, because those two things are cool. I'm into both of them, and I like to see them go together. And I got really into this because I watched it, and then I went looking for more shorts, thinking maybe I'll pick something different. And I ended up coming back to this one just because it kept kind of sitting in the back of my head going, okay, but why is this happening? So it left me with questions, and I think that's kind of important for a film like this. If it was just kind of a flat story, it would be less satisfying, I think. But I really enjoyed it because of that.
This is actually one that I told you before that I actually picked myself before I went to the other one, because it was, if anything, unique. I'm actually not a huge fan of found footage at all, but I thought the way this is told, and also in that kind of, I guess, 90s style, VHS, the way, at first I saw it and I'm like, oh. I'm like, okay, found footage, whatever. But it gets you because it has an interesting pacing. At first, you're watching it and you're like, okay, just get to something. And then you realize, the genius of this is that you realize that the whole thing is worth it, that it all matters. That's what makes this good, in the sense that and they get it. They start clipping it shorter and shorter because they don't want you to be, the whole thing being dumped on you again. But every single time you get more information, and it makes it fun. It makes you start to need and want the answer. And then here's the interesting thing, in my opinion. I love this because you don't get the answer. You get an ending. You don't get the answer. And that, at first it made me mad, and I'm like, you know what though, this is good. This, because you couldn't get an answer. It's impossible, for something like this. And the best part is the sound effects, because shit is going crazy outdoors, or whatever is happening. So I don't think they'd have the budget or the constraints or anything to be able to really give you a good answer, at least something that we'd enjoy.
What do you think was happening? Because I know Isaac really wants to talk about that.
I do.
I mean, it seemed like every time they did this, they were seemingly, it's either the butterfly effect or they're eroding time. They're disintegrating time itself. So to get it to stop, something needed to happen, the wine. It needed to happen, or things would go worse. It seemed like the world was imploding outside, but it would get worse if that didn't happen. And the acting was good enough, at least by her.
If what didn't happen?
Spilling the wine, unable to continue, because every time travel film is a cycle, almost everything. The Terminator, all this, it's always a self-fulfilling prophecy or a cycle that either has to be stopped or continued beyond our control. So this one looked like that, but it had to stop. It had to come to an end. And I was mad, but instead of getting an answer, we got an ending, and I'm cool with that.
What did you think was the consequence of the cycle stopping, though?
I think world destruction. I think that's what that meant. Was she didn't get the note, and that meant the end of the world. And that's why there was that long black.
But I think you're imposing that, right? Maybe. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, that everybody sort of gets to make up their own ending.
Yeah, that's why it's over.
Right. Maybe because I don't watch a lot of found footage films, and maybe just because it is a legitimate comparison, I felt like I was if you had told me that the people who made Blair Witch made this, the original Blair Witch made this, I would believe it. Because it was that level of good found footage movie. Yeah. But at the end of Blair Witch, while you are certainly left with a lot of questions, I think it's safe to say that most people think that the witch I mean, if you haven't seen the movie, I'm sorry, but it's an old movie, so you should have seen it by now. That the witch is the one who kills him, and that's why the camera goes black and whatever. In this, you're kind of, I mean, I guess it's good, but it sort of bugged me. It's not that I needed to figure it out, it's just that there was no, I don't know, spilling wine on a letter. I mean, I guess it's a neat idea, but it just wasn't enough of a thing. It wasn't enough of an event for it to feel like a satisfactory ending to what was otherwise a really entertaining film. It was incredibly well edited.
What did you think, Kevin? I'm curious, what did you think of the acting?
I thought that the lead girl was very good. I thought that the other woman was serviceable. You know, I've certainly seen way worse performances in many films, short and long. And you know, after a while, like if she had been if they hadn't done the editing thing where they stopped retelling as much just so they could give you a new piece of information without it getting redundant. If they had not done that, and I had to spend as much time with her each time they went back as we had to spend the first time with her, it probably would have bothered me more. But you see less and less and less of her as the movie goes on, and so it didn't bug me.
Get past it.
And by the way, I mean, I don't want that to be misconstrued. I didn't think she was awful. I just thought she was.
Yeah, I would agree. The really interesting thing to me about this was all the comments on the Vimeo page were saying how beautiful this movie was. And I agree. I also found it beautiful. But how fascinating is it that this thing, which is really grainy VHS, which probably 5-6 years ago we would have thought was terribly ugly, is now like beautiful to us. It's really weird.
I guess I'd have to know the context. I don't know, because I would never ever call this beautiful. But if the context is this is an amazing reproduction of that type of footage, on that level I agree.
I think this also has to do with, I've always believed that, and maybe I learned this from a teacher, I don't know, but I've always believed that you have two things when you're shooting something like this. You have visuals and sound, right? At least in production. So the visuals, if you think about it, can always be a choice. Like you can choose to do VHS 90s grainy stuff, right? But the sound, if the sound is bad, it's bad. It's gonna feel bad, it's gonna sound bad. You're just gonna get this cheap quality to it. So the visuals, and this probably was made for like nothing, but it feels bigger than it is because the sound effects were so good, because you felt the music, the voice was clear, whatever the hell was going on outside was audible. So you felt that sort of oncoming danger without having to see it. Like I love this because you can tell where the budget went, and sure this isn't huge, but you talked about not liking the wine kind of like creating the ending.
I thought that it was an interesting choice, but it wasn't like a big enough event for me to feel satisfied after what was, like I don't know, like someone obviously getting killed, even if I don't know exactly by whom, like that's a big enough thing that even if I'm fine being left not really knowing. Right? This just felt like you said, we got an ending. Right? It didn't feel like it. Yeah, this is the same. It didn't feel like it ended. It just feel like we got an ending.
Well, we didn't get the answers, but we got an ending kind of thing.
I feel like I was latching onto little things so much throughout the course of it, because it would be like one time they choose white, one time they choose red, the girl's in a different shirt. Well, like the implication of small changes, that when the ending wasn't huge because I was so like keyed in on the small things, it didn't bother me at all. It kind of felt fitting.
Right. Well, and I liked the open-endedness of it. I mean, I really enjoyed that it did leave you with questions, and I
do too.
It was, I mean, I think that was kind of interesting because there were so many explanations for what possibly could be happening, and I don't know. I'm kind of fascinated that you kind of picked up on the exact opposite that I did. I mean, I don't know what you guys believe, but I figured that you were, every time this happened, every time she came by with the letter and you looped it, little things were changing, white, red wine, but it was getting worse. Whatever was happening was getting worse. Getting worse around her.
So when she finally broke the cycle, it's okay.
Okay,
I
you
believe
thought that was good for
it was
her to do
accidental, but it needed to happen.
That's really
to save
interesting.
the world.
Yeah, see, I had the
So-
exact opposite interpretation. I thought it was like a Terminator-style loop, and she kept getting the note and doing something that, for whatever reason, made the alien attack or whatever it was happen sooner. You know?
Maybe.
But actually, your
But no,
your
it could be
perception
either
is
way.
probably actually way more logical.
It could.
What did you think? What did you think?
I'm really glad that you went with aliens because my visual of this was like, time is working like a piece of fabric and everything outside of it is pushing against it, and you poke a hole in it to come back through, and the more holes you
That's what
poke, the
he's
more
saying.
perforated
Yeah,
it is, and it
he's saying.
rips.
It's like a
That makes so
disintegrating
much
time.
more sense than
Right.
mine. But I watched it twice. I did not think that one single time. But you guys are probably exactly right.
That's what this is for.
Yeah.
We're all sharing ideas.
But I
Exactly.
would watch the alien version as well.
Yeah,
I
I
would
thought it was like
probably-
the aliens were getting closer every time. I thought we were going to see an alien. Didn't we see a strange figure at one point?
Outside, right?
No, that was the woman. That was the woman who
Yeah,
comes and gives the letter.
Yeah,
That's who
outside
that
the
is.
window or
But
something.
I do like the choice of time frame for this as well. Like, it's a woman who's clearly invented time travel, and she comes back like before she does anything. It's the eve of her getting accepted to the college that she goes to for learning how to make time travel, assumedly.
Yeah,
Right.
physics.
Right.
Like,
right?
so maybe why don't you go a little later in the game when maybe you're useful?
Yeah, she's saying don't go or something. Yeah, anyway, very interesting movie.
Wait, she said it to herself though, wasn't the other lady? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. If you want more information about how Short on Shorts works, or how you can submit your film for consideration, just click right here. And if you want to watch more episodes of Short on Shorts, click right here. You see this area right here? Point. Yep, right there. Click there. See you next time.